Here's something nobody really expected. Just 6 months ago, Washington was bracing itself for a tough clash with New Delhi. They were preparing for trade fights, drawing up heavy sanctions, and the language from Trump's circle was harsh and inflexible. The message aimed at India was simple: stand with America or get pushed aside. It looked as if the scene was set for a major confrontation. Yet look at what's happening now. The same officials who were ready to punish India are suddenly speaking of partnership and cooperation. They're discussing massive trade deals, and after months of leaving India without any senior American envoy, Washington hurried to send a top representative to New Delhi. These are not small adjustments. This is a complete turnaround in attitude. So what triggered this shift? What made America's leaders abandon their aggressive tone and try to act friendly? The surprising part is that India didn't change anything. New Delhi is still buying cheap oil from Russia. They are still putting high taxes on US goods. They are still refusing to take only one side, instead choosing to balance relations with everyone. India's strategy hasn't moved an inch. The switch came entirely from Washington. And when the most powerful country in the world changes its stance so quickly, it's not because of sudden generosity. It's because their original plan was failing badly, and that failure was creating problems far bigger than they imagined. That's what we need to unpack. Why America blinked first, why India holds more power than many people realize, and why this shift could change the way global politics works. Let's go back to where it began. When Trump returned to the White House, the world knew what was coming. America First was back. For countries like India, that meant one thing: follow Washington's demands or pay the price. And the costs arrived quickly. Extra tariffs were put on Indian goods sold to the US. An extra 25% on steel, textiles and chemicals made in India. The damage was immediate. Profits disappeared, jobs started to vanish, and whole industries couldn't compete in the American market anymore. But that was only the first blow. The bigger hit came next. Washington targeted India's oil imports. Another 25% tariff on Russian crude heading into India. This was no longer just about trade. It was about survival. India relies heavily on imported fuel. Cheap Russian oil, discounted because of the war, was helping keep fuel costs under control for more than 1 billion people. If that flow was cut, prices would rise fast and daily life would become unaffordable. Trump's logic seemed simple. Stop buying Russian oil, stop funding Moscow, join our side in the conflict. But for India, it sounded like being told to make their own citizens suffer for someone else's war. Why should Indian families pay twice as much for fuel just to satisfy Washington's plans? This is where things turned chaotic. While America was threatening India, they didn't even have a senior envoy in New Delhi. No ambassador, no top diplomat, no one to explain policies or smooth tensions. Imagine that. You start a trade war with one of the biggest economies, but don't even send someone to manage the relationship. Meanwhile, others filled the gap. China quickly sent top officials to New Delhi for high-level meetings. Russia kept signing energy agreements. India was included in major regional gatherings, sitting alongside both Moscow and Beijing, while America was missing. Where Washington left an empty chair, its rivals stepped in without delay. The real mistake wasn't only the tariffs or sanctions. It was the belief that India would give in quickly, that financial pressure would crush their resolve, that New Delhi had no option but to surrender to Washington's weight. That assumption was completely wrong. Then came the reversal, not slowly, but almost overnight. Harsh talk from Washington softened, threats turned into offers for dialogue, commands became requests for cooperation. So, what caused this? A mix of things. First, Trump met with Putin. That meeting shocked America's European allies and unsettled US officials. But here's the detail. After that summit, Washington's tone toward India changed, almost as if they realized they couldn't fight on all fronts at once. Second, India refused to bend. Months of pressure didn't move New Delhi. They kept buying Russian oil, shielding their industries and following their independent course, and they didn't hide it. They spoke openly and firmly about it. That sent a clear message to Washington: India would not be pushed around. Third, other major powers kept gaining ground. China's foreign minister was warmly welcomed in New Delhi. Russia announced fresh energy projects with India. Global forums were planned where India stood next to both Russia and China, while America was left out. Each passing week, Washington's absence meant a loss of influence. Gradually, the US language shifted. No more fiery speeches about India's unfair trade. Instead, new phrases appeared like working together and finding common ground. That's political code for our plan failed and we need a new one. Then came the strongest signal of all, a new ambassador appointed in a hurry. Not just any envoy, but one of Trump's trusted allies, someone with direct access to him. That wasn't routine diplomacy, that was emergency repair work. Why the sudden urgency? Because sticking with the hardline approach was backfiring. Every day without a strong US presence in New Delhi gave Russia and China more room to deepen ties with India. Every harsh statement pushed India further away. And losing India in today's world doesn't just mean losing one partner. It means your whole strategy for containing China falls apart. Look at the map. America's plan to limit China depends on Asian allies. Japan and Australia are dependable, but far from the action. India sits right in the middle of the Indian Ocean, guarding the shipping routes that carry nearly half of global trade. Remove India, and the strategy collapses. Washington finally saw the truth. You can't balance China without India, and you can't win India over through threats. What makes this story so striking is the amount of influence India holds now. And at this moment, that influence is stronger than ever. Think about it. Washington is softening its tone not because it wants to, but because it has to. China is growing more powerful each day. Russia refuses to back down. Europe is split and distracted, and in the middle of it all stands India, the fastest growing major economy, the largest population, a democracy that talks to everyone without belonging to anyone. That is real leverage. Why does India hold such a strong hand? First, geography. Sitting at the center of the Indian Ocean, India controls the sea lanes that link Asia, Africa, and Europe. That position cannot be replaced. Second, markets. American companies need fresh buyers outside their crowded home base. Where do they look? Toward India's rising middle class, which could soon include 500 million people. Tech giants, retail chains, defense suppliers all want access to Indian consumers. Third, energy. India is one of the biggest energy importers in the world. Right now, they're buying cheap oil from Russia, but they could just as easily switch to US oil and gas if the deal suits them. That bargaining chip is worth hundreds of billions. Fourth, military strength. America's plan to check China depends on partners in Asia. Without India, the plan is broken. India's navy dominates the Indian Ocean, and its military can challenge China from the south, while America pressures from the east. Without that support, China's path to dominance becomes much easier. India has something rare in global politics, diplomatic reach that no other big power can really match. It can sit at the same table with America, Japan, and Australia as part of one group, and then turn around and have talks with Russia and China in another. That flexibility is not common. In a world that is splitting into rival camps, having a country that can act as a bridge is extremely valuable, and right now that country is India. What does this actually mean? It means India should not view Washington's softer approach as some sudden act of kindness. This isn't charity, it's recognition. Recognition that India has become too important to ignore, too influential to push aside, and too powerful to treat like a minor player. This is the time for New Delhi to demand something real. Lower tariffs on Indian exports, better entry into advanced technologies, bigger American investments, and most importantly, a relationship that respects India's independence instead of trying to restrict it. But here is where the story becomes even more interesting. India is not just sitting around waiting for Washington to bring offers to the table. It is already using this moment to boost its own position further. In just the past months, India has signed major agreements with several countries at once, large infrastructure projects with Japan, new energy cooperation with the Middle East, advanced technology partnerships with Europe. They are widening their network while America is still trying to win them back. The timing is not random. Each new deal India signs is a message to Washington. We have options. And if you want our partnership, you must make it truly worthwhile. Defense is a clear example. For years, America wanted to sell weapons to India but held back the most advanced technology. Now India is saying, if you want us to choose your weapons instead of Russia's, then the full technology transfer must come with it. That is smart negotiating, not weakness, and it is one of the main reasons Washington's tone has changed, because America has finally accepted something important. They need India just as much, and maybe even more, than India needs them. For the first time in decades, this reality is shaping their approach. Look at the numbers to see why. India is already the world's fifth largest economy, and it is growing faster than any other large country. By 2027, it is on track to become the third largest, moving ahead of both Japan and Germany. Economic size always turns into political influence. What made Washington pay even closer attention is the fact that India's growth no longer depends on them. 2 decades ago, cutting trade ties with America would have been devastating. Today, it would still hurt, but it would not cripple India. They have too many other partners to rely on. China is the biggest trading partner. Europe imports massive volumes of Indian goods, and the Middle East supplies essential energy. India has built a web of connections that does not revolve around Washington anymore. At the same time, American companies are eager to enter India's market. Apple, Google, Amazon, Walmart, all are investing heavily. And when companies of that scale push for deeper ties, Washington's politics quickly adjust. India, of course, has been paying attention. They watched how China handled American pressure and learned key lessons. When America started trade wars with Beijing, China did not bend. It took the hit, diversified its links, and kept growing. Eventually, Washington had to shift strategy because pressure alone was not enough. India has applied the same playbook, absorbed the pressure, build alternatives, and become too vital to isolate. But India also has advantages China never had. It is a democracy. It shares cultural ties with the West, and it is not trying to replace America as the top global power. It only asks for equal treatment. Then comes the military angle. Washington's whole plan to limit China's rise in Asia depends on having reliable military partners. India is a central part of this. China is rapidly building its navy and placing bases across the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean. Washington cannot handle this alone. Japan covers the north, Australia the south, but only India controls the central Indian Ocean and those critical trade lanes. When Trump's team kept applying pressure on India over trade, they ignored this military fact. But once Beijing's naval build-up accelerated and New Delhi hinted at deepening defense ties with Moscow, alarms rang in the Pentagon. Military planners told the White House bluntly, "We cannot risk losing India, even if that means stepping back on trade fights." That was the real turning point. In Washington, security always outweighs economics. So what does this mean today? The truth is, this is not Trump suddenly becoming a fan of India. This is America waking up to the fact that its old methods no longer work. The past system of threats, ultimatums and demands for loyalty, India will not accept it anymore. They are now in a position to say no, to take pressure without collapsing, and to continue charting their own path. They have enough options that no single country can corner them. That is a big change in the balance of power. For Washington, this means treating India as a genuine equal, not as a junior partner. No more ultimatums, no more with us or against us. Instead, both sides must look for common ground where each can benefit, while also accepting that disagreements will remain. For New Delhi, it is proof that their approach works. Multi-alignment works. Managing relationships on all sides while protecting national interest works. Refusing to be anyone's follower works. The pressure from Washington did not weaken India. It only made them stronger and more sure of themselves. But this does not mean smooth sailing forever. Trump's softer approach is based on practicality, not personal admiration. If India leans too far, or if it grows too close to Moscow or Beijing, pressure will return. And if America finds another way to counter China without depending so much on India, their attitude could shift again. That is why New Delhi must handle this moment carefully. They should lock in long-term deals now, better trade terms, assured technology transfers, and partnerships that last beyond one political cycle. They must convert America's current need into permanent advantages. The significance of this moment goes beyond Washington. It is about India stepping into the role of a real global power, one that others consult instead of command. Think about the signal this sends worldwide. If India can resist American pressure and even force Washington to change course, it shows other mid-sized powers that they too can demand better terms, if they are strong enough. Countries like Brazil, Indonesia and Turkey are already observing closely. They see that India's balancing method is producing results and are beginning to follow similar strategies. This could reshape global relations, moving away from rigid alliances toward a system where independent states cooperate when interests align, but keep freedom elsewhere. Of course, timing matters here too. Beijing is watching closely, waiting to see if India moves toward America. Moscow is also uneasy, worried about losing one of its most reliable energy clients. Both would be glad to see Washington and New Delhi drift apart again. That is why the timing of Trump's softer moves is key. Appointing an ambassador just before important regional meetings where India will sit with China and Russia is not accidental. It signals that Washington is stepping back in, but this time under new rules. Rules where India is treated as a true partner, not a follower. So when people ask if Trump is really softening toward India, the answer is yes, but not because of goodwill. It is out of need. India has reached a stage where threats no longer work. Pressure only drives them further away. Today, Washington needs India more than India needs Washington. That is the new reality. And it changes everything about how this relationship will work going forward. India is no longer asking for favors. They are the ones setting the conditions. And for the first time, Washington is listening. The real question now is whether both nations can transform this tactical adjustment into a true strategic partnership, one where India maintains independence while America gains the ally it needs against China. If they succeed, the balance of power in Asia will look very different. If they fail, tensions will return. But next time, New Delhi will be holding even more cards than before. That is the real story behind the new, softer approach. It is not about personal friendship, it is about power. And right now, India has far more of it than anyone expected.